So you might have noticed I have been posting more stuff on the site. For example, lists. There are now 8 of the 10 lists are posted. So I would encourage you to go to the lists and make your choices. Email me those choices, and then I will, in turn, post them on the site as well. Okay? So, that's where we're standing. We're getting now close to the time when your papers start to be due. Remember, I mentioned last time we kind of start slow in here. Slowly, and but the speed will pick up soon. So don't be lulled into complacency. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Lulled into complacency, which can happen. All right, do you have any questions for me? Have any points of order? Have any debate? Any items for oh, yes.
I noticed some of the quizzes don't show a grade after they're submitted. So is that you grade it afterwards, or is it automatically graded?
Well, it should automatically happen. So I'll have to.
Yeah, it does get automatic.
I do too.
I think I passed.
All right, I'll double check it.
I
See.
didn't get my grade for quiz 1 until like quiz 2 was active.
It might not show till it's like due. Some of the quizzes online.
Well, that could be if you take it early. Yeah, they may not.
Today's Wednesday, right?
So, all right, I'll double check it. See if I have the settings correctly set up correctly. All the right buttons pushed. Sometimes, they don't. They make things, well, I guess I shouldn't say, it's a wonderful system. It'll be fine. Sometimes they make things more difficult than it seems they need to be, but that's just me. So I'm still working out all the bugs on it. I suppose by the time I kind of get this one figured out, we'll go to another new system. That's what tends to have happened. I've been using those kind of software now for like 20 years, and I've used like about 7 of them. So that means, like every couple of years, I have to learn a new one. They're similar, but they have little peculiarities. All right, anything else? Anybody having trouble finding their you should go to the list and pick things, but I know sometimes people pick things for different reasons. I won't ask what all those reasons are. I suspect, well, I have suspicions, but I won't voice them. But you should make sure you can get access to it. And if you have read the book or watched the film before, you really should watch it again with a different mindset. Remember, we're not talking about entertainment. That's what most people watch films for entertainment value, right? For escapism. They want to pretend that they're in a different world, a different place, a different time, or whatever. I mean, I do that every day, especially when I'm driving. I try to imagine I'm not really driving. It makes it more exciting. But for this, you should watch the film or read the book as somebody looking at it from a history point of view, historical point of view, not an entertainment point of view. Should be more analytical rather than passive, I guess I'd say. A lot of people don't, they don't want to do kind of what I'm asking you to do because they say it wrecks the film for them. They don't want to think about the background. They don't think about the different shots and the conflation of characters, or all these other things that might be there. That's what I'm asking you to do, because I think it helps you then, even in the future, be able to use these as sources. Yes.
Are the books aimed towards the local library, or would we have to like take a book by ourselves?
I don't know if the books are in the library. I have not done that. When I was at a previous institution, I had some help, and I actually gave all of the call numbers for the books, and I tried to make sure the books were in the library. That's a lot of work for me, and it constantly changes as the collection changes. So I would say no, I don't know if they're in our library. They're fairly common books, but they may not be in our library. I don't know. There are other ways to obtain them. You can look at them digitally for a fee. You can, if you have that sort of thing. What is it? The Book Nook. What's the other one? Amazon has a Kindle. The Kindle, as I call it. Those kinds of things. There is a public library as well. You might think about that, because they have some of these books they might be more likely to have than our library. Occasionally, depending on the library. Okay? So yes, that's one thing you need to do. Go through the list, pick something obviously that interests you, but also it's up to you to find your access to it. Whether that's through Netflix or Redbox or Amazon Prime or your grandparents' VHS collection, that would be fine as well. I like VHS. It just doesn't like me. I actually have VHS I want to convert to DVD and then convert it to digital files and then put it up on the web. And then charge people to see it. And then be sued. Okay. That's sort of the progress. That's the outline of what's going to happen. I had a student in one of my classes who I would tell them be careful about copyright infringement and things. This guy in my class, not at this school, I said, you got to be careful of that kind of thing. And he actually told me that the FBI had come to his house. Why? Because he had been illegally downloading and viewing movies on his computer, and they had tracked him down. So it can be done, and sometimes they do it. They did it to him. And they basically told him he needed to destroy the copies, and of course not do it anymore, or face, like those warnings say on there, $10,000 and so much prison time. So be careful how you access your material, I guess I'm saying, because Big Brother or Big Sister is watching. I just assume they're always watching me. Especially drones, black helicopters, stuff like that. A lot of stuff flies over my house. Coincidence? I think not. Like I always say, just because I'm paranoid doesn't mean I'm not being followed. All right. Enough about that, though. If there are no other questions. So be sure you're signing up, be sure you have access, and be sure you're watching and reading, because that's going to speed up now. So today, I thought we would take the time we have left here and see if we can have a little discussion. History through the popular culture. Let me ask you this. So this is going to be participatory, at least that's what I'm hoping. What are sources of popular culture? When we say popular culture, what do you think of? What's that? YouTube? YouTube. Anything that's on YouTube?
Pretty much.
Really?
When I think of pop culture, just what's popular in that time period.
Popular in that time period. Okay. And remember, we made the distinction earlier about high culture and low culture. In other words, it used to be that we had two worlds, right? You had the world of high culture that was not necessarily that popular, and popular in that most people knew about it. Most people still today don't go to the opera. Most people today probably don't go hear symphonies and orchestras, live performances. Most people today probably don't do those kinds of things. They still exist. But in a previous era, let's say 100 years ago or more, they were popular in the sense they were popular with the wealthy, popular with the educated. And they would go and experience these things and talk about these things and know the names of the characters from operas or novels or things that they were studying, reading, or enjoying, kinds of music that other people just didn't even know about, right? And so they can make reference to them, and these other people would know about it. Likewise, the people who were not wealthy, we'll call it the low culture, they had songs, often called folk songs. They had dances. They had, their own jokes and limericks and stories, folk tales that they told and that they knew that the people in the high culture did not know, right? And so there were kind of two worlds operating. But once we had the kind of mass media, mass market, and it doesn't necessarily have to be visual like films, we then began to see a blending of the two, so that today, whether someone's educated or not educated, whether they're wealthy or poor, there are certain things that we can say are sort of common cultural elements that most people know about, right? So how has that changed? What do you think were the sources of popular culture 120 years ago, 1900, let's say 19. I picked 1900 for fun. Round numbers. Yeah? Oh, I thought somebody said something.
Yeah, newspapers.
Newspapers certainly would be. Newspapers were circulated. They had a relatively low price. They were oftentimes not even a daily, sometimes twice a day. We don't usually think about that, but they used to come out with kind of a morning edition and a late edition or an afternoon edition, something like that. And so some people got the paper twice a day. Early on, because you didn't have radio, you didn't have television, you didn't have the internet. How are you getting your news? What else in 1900 would you have besides, say, a newspaper?
The circus.
The circus. Ooh. Okay. Yeah, interesting. You know, circus may well attract a wide variety of people. I don't know. I don't know if you're snooty people would go to the circus. They would feel that was beneath them or something. But yeah. Okay. Yeah, there's certainly, I would say, shows, sort of like popular shows, almost like sort of the precursors to vaudeville, that sort of thing, where people would go and get entertainment. Someone is a singer telling jokes, people dancing, but in a popular style, not in a, like ballet and that kind of stuff, right? Okay. What else? Sports? Okay. What kind of sports are you thinking about? Boxing? Okay. Boxing certainly would.
Boxing back then was
Boxing was popular, yeah. And, by 1900, baseball was. Is that.
Isn't that how the pictures look?
That's how you buy? Well, yeah. Yeah, they would show the pictures of the guys like that. Yeah. Yeah. Bare knuckle boxing. None of these gloves. Baseball. Baseball. Baseball is an interesting phenomena, especially in the United States, because there are, in fact, baseball professional, I guess you might say, or semi-professional baseball all over the country. Every town, every small city had a baseball team. And sometimes they had one they called the Industrial League. What's the Industrial League? Well, these guys who played baseball worked in a factory in the town. And when baseball season came, they didn't show up to the factory, they showed up to practice, they showed up to games. And so they were being paid by the factory to work, but their work was playing baseball. Yeah. But then in the off season, they worked at the factory. So that was called the Industrial League. There are several kinds of leagues like that. And I knew a guy who had done that. He'd been a pitcher for the Industrial League, and he got, locally you get pretty famous, and you work for the factory, and then you play your sport, baseball in this case. There were also other local teams. Now we sort of have the remnants of that today in all the minor league teams of baseball. We have the A, the 2A, the 3A, all that kind of stuff, AAA, that are sort of farm clubs, and that whole system, though, is a remnant of this old system of professional or semi-professional baseball on the community level. So there are a lot more professional baseball teams. So yes, going to the ballpark and the activities that happen at the ballpark. Somebody playing an organ at the ballpark. Songs that were there. Seventh inning stretch. Right? Take me out to the ball game. And then, of course, the famous players, or at least even locally famous players. Right? That can all kind of work into it. One that we didn't mention was magazines. Magazines really develop in magazines, journal kind of things, develop in the 1800s, in the 19th century. They become very popular because they are focused. They usually don't come out daily like a newspaper, but they are focused on special interests groups. There are religious ones. There are ones with, suppose you might say, hobbies or things like that. Yes.
I just have a question. Would dances count as popular culture?
Dances could, yes.
Like that's like a way of communication?
It is. And it's a way, especially if we're talking about a kind of public, where people can see it, like at a fair, I was thinking of state fairs and county fairs. Those used to be far, I don't know if they're as popular as they used to be. Even when I was younger, they were more popular than they seem to be today. And those were an avenue where you brought people together and you had shared experience. That's really what we're talking about, a shared experience that people can have, and people do have, so that so they can relate information that way. I remember when I was a kid, I went to the county fair, and they still had, I guess what people would call the freak and geek shows. They did. I remember I went in and saw the man with they said, reportedly, the largest feet in the world. And let me tell you, they were big feet. And so, you'd pay like, I don't know what it was, 25 cents, some change, 50 cents, I don't know what it was. It wasn't much, because I was a kid, I didn't have much. But I thought, oh man, with the biggest feet in the world. And, they have a guy announcing it. He's alive, he's alive. Come and see the man with the biggest feet in the world. If you can prove that he doesn't have the biggest feet in the world, the management will pay you $10,000. And so then, you pay your money, you go into this kind of windy thing, and here's a guy just sitting there. He was just sitting there. He wasn't doing anything. He was sitting there, had his feet up on a chair, and you walked by. It was really weird. I still remember. It was a weird experience. But his feet were huge. And he was actually in Ripley's Believe It or Not. You've heard of Ripley's Believe It or Not? They had a thing about him. He was in Ripley's Believe It or Not as the guy with the biggest feet in the world. He's from Peru, as I remember it. And he had actually swam in the Olympics because his feet were like, flippers. They were like, they had so much surface area, he could swim pretty fast in his day. I don't think he'd done much swimming when I saw him, but lately. But so that kind of thing. So that's an experience that we don't have today, I guess, for a variety of reasons. But going to a fair and the games, the food, the shows, shared experience. Okay. What about the sources in 1950? How has it changed, do you think, from 1900? In 50 years, how did it change? Television was just getting started, yeah. I think after World War II, 1948, 47. What else do we have? It's different. What's that? Radio. Radio was huge. Radio was huge in the intervening years when it came on the scene. Radio programs, radio dramas, radio sort of variety shows, people singing. Families would sit around, much like now people sit around and watch a television. People would sit around in front of the radio and look at the radio because that's where the sound was coming from. But of course you had to imagine it. It was a different kind of thing. You had to imagine what the people looked like. You had to imagine what was there. It was also, I guess, quite, you didn't have to be restricted, right? As long as you could describe it, the people could be doing it. And in your mind, you have to imagine you're on a different planet or you're encountering some strange creature or whatever it might be. But these became shared experiences. What about by 2000? The internet. How does the internet has really been a profound influence, I think, no doubt. I remember the internet before there were web browsers. I used to use it, and I had dial-up.
Me too.
Yeah.
You had dial-up?
Yeah.
And
Those stupid.
It came can use the phone and the computer at the same time.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's what made a college school.
Okay. I remember the first time I saw a web browser, I thought, man, this is amazing. This is gonna change everything. It was called Mosaic. That was the first one. I think it was the very first one. And anyway, of course, it was very slow. I remember seeing it. It was going like coming down the screen. And I'm going, look at that, pictures and things like that. So yeah, and now of course, look at everything we have. So a lot of that. And I remember it used to be, of course, when I've had email for a long time, because it used to be to get email, since I was connected to a university, you could get email. It was harder to get email and have internet access and stuff if you were not connected to a university. And it used to be if you'd sent somebody an email, that was the best way to get in touch with them and get an answer to them, because they had this new thing and they weren't getting much email. So you'd send it and that was kind of novel and you would get an answer. I remember communicating with the director of an excavation in Israel, and somebody said, send him an email, he'll definitely respond. And he did. I ended up not going to his dig that summer because of Scud missiles. You'll have to look that up. Scud missiles were descending and people were wearing gas masks in Israel. So they actually canceled the dig that summer. Okay, what about today? How has it changed from, say, 2000 to today? It's been 20 years now. Hard to believe, hard for me to believe. It's been since 2000. We've now got about 20 years in there, 19, going on 20. What's different? This would say be in your lifetime. What is different for most of you, right? Social media. How has social media changed the internet? What's that?
Things became more mobile.
Okay, things are mobile. Yeah, certainly the smartphone has revolutionized the use of the internet and our lives. I mean, we use the smartphone now. 20 years ago, you didn't have a smartphone. That's for sure. Had phones, but they weren't smart. They weren't that far. I still remember having a phone. I resisted getting a cell phone. I didn't really want a cell phone because I don't want people to call me. I don't want to talk to people. I figure if they call me, they just want something. They either want money, or they want to complain, or they're going to tell me that I've got to do something. So why make that easier? I had a phone. I had a phone in my office. I had a phone at home. I even had a kind of an answering machine. But to carry one around, I just really wasn't that interested. So I resisted. But I finally, of course, succumbed to it and got myself a phone. But I remember at first, if you wanted to type anything on your phone, I don't know if you remember this, you had to go through a whole series of, like, click this, you know what I'm talking about? You didn't just have the letters there. It would pop up a thing, and then you'd have to choose from that, and then you'd have to go to the next, space it over, do this. I mean, it was just so tedious. I thought, man, why would anybody ever want to text? I mean, this is like torture. So, of course, that's changed. Yeah, smartphones has probably been the biggest development, and then the speed, the speed of it, because I was creating websites back in the 90s, right? And the thing you had to really worry about was the size of everything, like the size of an image. You had to cut images down so that they were very small. It took up less space so that they would load faster. Otherwise, your web page would come up and the pictures wouldn't come up, and the pictures would take a long time to come up and nobody would wait for that. So one of the things I had to do was scale down. That was one of the things I I hated doing, but you had to scale down the images so that they would actually come up faster on a website. Now, it's not that much of a problem. You know, everything's gotten much bigger, files and transfer and streaming. Streaming is a new thing in the last 20, and that certainly has changed everything, right? Netflix, I think I would say in the past 20 years, one of the biggest changes is Netflix, right? In 2000, I don't think there was a Netflix. If there was a Netflix, it was what you got DVDs in the mail, right? And I don't remember when Netflix started. I think in the 90s, but then they shifted to streaming. And I thought, man, I don't know how this is going to work. I don't know how reliable the internet is. But all that stuff has sort of driven the internet to sort of respond, and they kind of go hand in hand. And it's still growing. It's still developing. It's not where it's going to be ultimately, I suppose. But everything changes so rapidly, right? Okay, sources for today. So I've got some, found this little picture here. I was trying to identify the people that are, the things that are on there. Not all people.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah, I'm about to say they're all pretty easy for the most part.
Yeah, there you go.
Why do you see Snooki?
Snooki, yeah, the Snooki. The Schnookster. What do you got?
I was just saying, oh, that's one thing that changed. Reality TV became super popular.
What came popular?
Reality TV.
Oh, reality TV.
That wasn't a thing back
Well, yeah, I get, you know, I think the kind of first reality TV probably started back in the, no, I remember in the 1980s, you had reality TV. I remember the first reality, what I would call reality TV was called Cops.
Oh.
I guess it's still on. Is it still on?
Yeah.
But I mean, that's been on since the 80s or early 90s. And, you know, they're taking cameras, they're going around, you know, they're like going in to arrest this guy and he's yelling at them and stuff. And they put him in the car and they're following him around. That became hugely popular then. I mean, Cops was a huge show. And then other shows like that started coming out certainly in the 90s. But you're talking about the sort of different kind of reality TV. Yeah, where it's, less real. I mean, more staged, dramatized or whatever. Yeah, where you're not sort of interacting with criminals like that or people that don't know. Everybody is on it, is in on it.
You got like The Bachelor, The Kardashians.
The Kardashians, yeah.
She's on there too.
I mean,
Who's on there?
Kim Kardashian.
Kim Kardashian's on there?
Marilyn Monroe.
on the left.
They're under Darth Vader.
Oh, I see, yeah. Hey, what's that blob thing in the front of them?
That was from a cartoon on Nickelodeon
Okay.
in the 90s. Can't think of
I see Beavis and Butthead. Those are my,
it. Yeah. You got the guy,
Two of my-
Pulp Fiction, John
yeah, the Pulp Fiction guys, yeah. C3PO.
Top priority.
You got the Joker up there.
Breaking Bad.
Yeah, Jordan, a gremlin.
Yeah, it looks like Michael Jordan. Who's the guy with the bag over his head?
He's a rapper. This is an album.
Oh, okay. I can't see.
The guy with the bag over his head is a rapper?
Yeah.
Is that his thing? He comes out and performs with a bag over his head?
I don't know.
Okay. All right, I'm all for it. I can remember, here's a reality show that you should look up. It's kind of a reality show. It's called The Gong Show. The Gong Show. It was on television. It was sort of a game. Well, it wasn't really, well, it was a contest. It wasn't a game. People would come out and perform. Now, you know, you had like Ed McMahon had Star Search, which was like these are the forerunners to the things they have today, like The Voice and all that. Star Search, though, was, you didn't just sing. You had other things you could do. Yeah, and so that's back like in the 70s and in the 80s. But the Gong Show was making fun of that already. Where basically everybody came out, almost everybody came out was really bad. And they had a panel of supposed, like experts or celebrities, and they had a big gong behind them. And if they thought it was just too terrible, they would hit the gong, and then people would have to stop.
So kind of like Showtime at the Apollo.
Otherwise they would get points. Like they'd say, okay, I'll give you 5 points and whatever. Then they'd add it up and they'd see who wins at the end. But the Gong Show, you should take a look at some of the old Gong Show stuff. That was kind of reality stuff. But what may remind me of it is they had a guy that would come out with a bag on his head and perform. And he'd tell jokes. He's called the Unknown Comic. Because, he never revealed his face. He'd come out and say, hey, here I am, the Unknown Comic. And then he would do these, he had holes right here, and he would do all his jokes. My favorite thing is he came out one time, and he pulls his hand out, and he's got like a little bag over his hand with holes in it. And he says he's now a ventriloquist. I said, hi. You talk like that, and of course, Anyway, it was silly, but fun. All right, so let's think about, we've already been sort of talking about it, the influence of popular media, but let's take a look at social media. Let me ask you this. What social media do you use regularly? Facebook? Snapchat? Twitter? Instagram? Do you use Instagram? No? Hmm?
Yeah, YouTube's to the point where I don't even consider it social media.
Yeah.
I consume so much content on YouTube that it's just like.
But yeah, when I see you use it, I don't just mean viewing it. Are you posting stuff on YouTube?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
You are.
Comedy, talking with other people.
Talk with other people? Okay. So YouTube, you're saying YouTube, I know YouTube has gotten much bigger than when it first came out. So tell me, how do you use it? Let's say YouTube. Typically,
I have people I'm subscribed to, so when they post a video, like it shows up in my sub box and I can watch their videos. It's essentially like, and then YouTube will recommend videos that are similar. So like if I'm watching if I'm watching like, I don't know, basketball highlights, I'll get a bunch of basketball highlights and I recommend it.
okay.
And then if I like their content, I can subscribe or like the video or dislike the video.
Okay.
Also recently added something, well, like in the past couple of years, where accounts can post maybe pictures with little captions or post polls or just update their followers. And it's very similar to kind of like a combination of like the Facebook and the Twitter, where you're able to interact with your audience, not just through a full form video,
Okay.
but through like little posts throughout the week.
Okay.
Yeah, they also have it to where there's a bell now to where it'll send it directly to your phone. It's a notification.
A notification to your phone.
When they post.
Go ahead.
On the YouTube channel, because I have one, they have like a community tab where you can like post stuff like just like on Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that.
And who is in your community tab?
People are
It's just
subscribed.
like, it's like your
You subscribe to it?
Yeah, it's like the creators who make like the content and stuff like that, they can
Uh-huh.
post on the YouTube community tab, and it's just like posting on Facebook or Instagram.
Okay. Well, I know there's a lot of there could be comments down below.
Yeah.
Well, I've had a YouTube channel for a long time, but I don't use it that way. I post videos of mainly of my classes, and then I link it to the thing. I've been doing that for quite a while. And occasionally I'll search something, it'll come up on YouTube and I'll watch it. But I guess I don't go to it all the time. I don't really subscribe. I've got a few people, I got like 10 people that subscribe to my channel. 8 people, stuff like that. So, why, I don't know. That makes no sense to me. But there it is. So yeah, I know YouTube has really grown. How I knew YouTube was growing is in my neighborhood, Halloween is a huge thing. For trick-or-treating is a huge thing. Because our neighborhood, is kind of nice, but we don't have gates. I think that's why. So anybody can get into our neighborhood. And so for Halloween, we get hundreds of people. And it's like a 3 or 4 hour craziness. But the kids come, and so I give them candy, and then I usually say, well, I just kind of guess who they are. A lot of times I know who they are. Oh, you're Spider-Man or whatever, you're this or that. And this one guy came up and I give him I said, well, who are you? And he told me the name. I said, I don't know who that is. He got really angry with me. He said, he's a YouTube star. I don't know who. Where do you get your news?
Facebook.
Facebook?
Professors and mouths. Like, I don't enjoy news.
So you never watch news?
It's depressing.
What's that?
Do you watch you don't watch any television news? Do you watch?
I go on like
There's no reason to watch television.
Yes.
It's all dramatized reviews.
If
I
there's a
watch
big-
the local news, because I like to know what the weather is.
Oh yeah, unless
Okay.
it's like
The local
I love the
news.
weather.
I can ask my phone for the weather.
Yeah, exactly.
I like the warning
I like the
shows.
podcasts.
You listen to podcasts. You get news from your podcasts.
I listen to a lot of podcasts.
NPR is really good.
You had your hand up.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's a lot of news that post on like Google and like Snapchat. Even YouTube has like some videos you can watch. Just like
So like headlines or something, things sort of pop up. Yeah.
It'll be like on Twitter, I'll like see a headline and then I'll look it up later. And like, I don't trust the news sources on Twitter at all, but like I'll see a headline and be like, okay, let's see how exaggerated this is. And I'll try to research it a little bit more myself if I'm actually interested in whatever the news
I
was.
think Facebook has ruined them.
Well, let me ask you this. Have you ever shared something, a post or whatever, made a post or shared a post that you later found out wasn't true?
Nope.
Or that somebody sort of argued with you or something and said, this isn't true, something like that.
I've purposefully retweeted that were false.
You purposely retweet. Why do you do
There's
that?
a website called The Onion.
Oh yeah.
And they post like fake, like literally fake news, but it's all like super well written. And so like if you don't know what The Onion is, you could read that and think it's true. And I think they're hilarious. And so I retweet them all the time.
It's
Okay.
long form satire. So it's like a long article, the whole thing is
Yeah.
a joke.
I also love being like a contrarian, so like it's just kind of fun when people
Oh.
get mad in comments over.
So you're a troll.
in a sense, yes. but with the Onion, it's more of a.
Yeah. The Onion.
People should know by this point
Yeah,
that
this
The Onion is.
is not real.
Yeah. Or maybe it is true. We just don't want to believe it. Yeah. Okay. So let's say okay. Kobe Bryant died. How did you find out about that? How did you first hear it? YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. So nobody heard it on any like radio, television, any
That was, like,
print.
noon, though.
I can't remember the last time I turned my TV on. To be honest, that it wasn't plugged into my laptop.
So it wasn't it kind of spread really far at like noon.
Right.
So
Yeah,
there's no
Right, but how did it spread at noon? I mean, how? I'm just trying to figure out how people found out.
They put it. TMZ puts it on like their
Online,
Twitter
yeah.
and their webpage, and then people repost it.
TMZ reported it before the Bryants knew.
Yeah, it's
TMZ.
the no, they really
Okay, so do you trust TMZ
No,
as
I
a
don't.
source?
After a while, you see it actually.
No, you don't trust it.
Usually with a story like that, you'll see it on TMZ, so then you'll
And
Google
like
it,
30 minutes
and
later.
then you'll find out if anybody else is reporting it.
Okay. So you see it and then you Google it and see if other people have it.
Even on the television, like if I'm watching the local news and they report something, I'll usually Google it before I believe it.
Okay,
It's
gotta
like
Google it.
Historical documents. The more you have saying.
So you trust Google
I
as a
trust-
source.
I trust Google's sources. I don't usually use Google News, but Google will give me
Uh-huh.
like 3 different news sources, and if 3
Yeah.
people report the same thing, I just
You can also advanced search for scholarly sources as well. That's what I do for like my assignments and such.
So yeah, I guess I'm trying to figure out if, you know, like if three sites have it on Google, then it's true. But what if those 3 sites are all getting it from a bad source?
Usually you can tell by who it is, like if it's.
So who would you trust?
I would probably trust, I usually look for local police stations if it's a crime or a death. Like LAPD was reporting on the Kobe Bryant death, so
Yeah.
I believe that.
Okay.
But
All
Police
right.
reports are coming from the police department themselves, and it's pretty reliable.
Large news media outlets, because they have like a reputation, if they report false news, if it's
Right.
not like biased, but entirely false news, then that's like reducing their credibility, so.
All right. Taylor, what do you got?
I think back to a couple of years ago when Tom Petty.
Tom Petty, yes.
And, cause he was on life support and technically no brain activity, but they were releasing articles saying that he'd already died. And then a few hours later, they had to say, no, technically he's not actually dead yet. They were just too, like, they jumped the gun trying to get an article out.
Yeah, it seems like everyone wants to be the first one to report something. So.
yes.
All right, well, we'll leave it there for now.